Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me tonight is going to be Desiree Duncan, and we're going to be talking about vampires tonight, amongst other things, and this is going to be her return trip to my show, and, well, me and her had a nice, interesting, fun conversation the last time when I was still over at Blog Talk Radio, but this time we're on my own site, and she's got some links here that she was going to share with us, but I'll let me and her get to that as we go. So, Desiree, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Oh, I'm doing just fine, too. But you told me, though, that you had a lot of things go down since the last time you was at my show. You've, been to more places and learned more things, so to speak?
Oh, yeah. I've been doing some traveling. I've traveled to a few different states and also recently traveled overseas. Been to quite a few countries in the last year, but I'm living currently in Germany. Doing a lot of research as an anthropologist, doing a lot of research on the community, and reviewing a few places with some history and some clubs, different destinations for vacations, if you will.
So how long have you been over in Germany now?
Since Halloween of 2009.
2009, wow, and it's 2011, so you've been over there a couple of years, and I think it's been 3 years since you've been on my show, right?
Yeah, I think I was on your show just before I left, yeah.
And I think you're still doing the same weddings you used to do, is that correct?
Yes, I am an ordained priestess, and I still do Gothic-style weddings, yeah, but I've done a few more things since then. Not too many weddings here overseas. Not that they're not wanted, but a lot of people in my community happen to already be married.
Yeah, and I think you also said something in your bio about there's some other sidelines you have going on up there as well as the marrying people, right?
Yes, I've been actually doing some editing for some of the German community, the vampire community out here, translating some of their German works into English so that it can be found out in Western society. Also, I worked with a few Dutch sites, and there's a few places in Brussels that are actually quite deep into the vampire community, and they come to me and ask for a few editing tips. I've also been writing some reviews on my own personally, but been submitting them to a website that we have on Facebook for the vampire community so that they can learn a little more about what's going on here in Europe.
And that's the one that I'm looking at here. It says www.facebook.com/groups 113-710-541-993-702. Is that sound like the right link to Facebook?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes. And that's a private group, very small, but there's a lot of good information there.
Okay. And if I know anybody interested in vampirism, I'll pass this right along to. In fact, this here is going to be up in the archive along with last night's show and all the other shows for future posterity. I think I got a little tongue-tied there tonight, didn't I? Now, there was something I was thinking about I had on the tip of my tongue a minute ago, and somehow I managed to lose it. I'm trying to get that back where I was at. Okay, last time you were doing the weddings here in America, you moved over there, and let's see, you say you're doing editing for people and you're writing books, so you're also kind of like, what, a ghostwriter?
Yes, there's somewhat. I'm not necessarily asking for credit on any of it, but I have been helping out a few of the people writing articles out here in the vampire community.
And I see here you're also a a community volunteer and a registered foster parent. Is that a registered foster parent? Is that, do you have a kid in home, or is that you're available to take one if they need it?
Right now, currently, I am not fostering any children, but I just think it's good for people to know that we're just regular, everyday people, that we're good, upstanding citizens. We're not crazy freaks like some people might think, or maybe some kind of Hollywood character of some kind who's lurking in the corners stalking children. We're regular, everyday people. We care about others. We love people the same as everyone else, and most of the people you'll see in the community really have, say, people who have empathic kind of empathetic feelings towards others. They really feel these emotions more, so you tend to see a lot of us in the community helping others.
Okay. Sounds like you're a very active person now that you're over there. Going back to the last time that you were on my show, I think if I remember correctly, you and me talked in depth about energy vampires. Now, I don't know if anybody listening here tonight or that's going to be listening in the archives or, iTunes or Shoutcast or whatever, is going to have already listened to that other show. But what we had talked about more specifically was that there's different kind of vampires, like you got your energy vampire, your vampire that lives on blood, and what other kinds were there?
I don't know. There's people who live on different forms of energy. There's elemental vampires who decide to feed from the energy of nature, animals, or there's also ambient energy, feed off the energy of crowds, the energy that's given off by even devices, music. But it all comes down to ways of feeding off the energy, whether it be that person doesn't have the talent to feed from a specific type of energy or it's a preference. Really varies, but it really depends on the person's ability and preference.
Okay. So here's something I'm just picking up on I didn't get the last time. Even the vampires that go for people's blood are really, after the energy that's in the blood, like the plasma?
Yes, the life force in the blood. It's just another form of being able to get that energy. Now,
but it all boils down to
in the blood. Yeah.
Right. So I would say it all boils down to the energy in the end for all of them, just different routes of getting there.
And it sometimes it's a preference. There are plenty of psychic vampires who feed from blood. Just it's a preference for them. I can feed from both, but I prefer to fang feed, I guess, blood feeding. That's the one I prefer mostly. It's more intimate, but I also happen to be married to my donor, so it's something more spiritual between us. But I believe you can get the energy out of the blood. It doesn't necessarily need to be blood, but that's because I have both abilities.
Okay. Now, how did you first find out that you were a vampire?
Well, actually, I've always thought it was a little different. Since the time I was probably 1 or 2, I was always able to see, hear, and speak with spirits. So I've always been a little bit different. But when I was probably about, I think, 10, 11 years old, my dad went to see a psychic, and we're talking about straight-laced Marine drill sergeant who probably wouldn't ever do anything like this. And I think I just so happened to catch him in it, and his psychic said, "Hey, did you know that on your father's side of the family that you guys were vampires?" And I didn't really have any idea what that really meant or what that really was, but it was something that I began to look into at that point. It kind of gave me an idea of maybe why I might feel so different. And what I came to find is that I think that I might be psychic and also a vampire. but I don't think that the two really went together. I think they're two separate abilities.
That could be. Now, James in the chat room, also known as Genocide, is asking if you drink blood.
Yes, I do. And it's not a daily thing, but yes, I do. I feel that when my energy gets really low and I'm feeling really sick, that it seems to be the only thing to really pick me up and to make me feel better. It seems almost necessary. After a couple months of not having it, I can feel myself really sick and weak, and I'm in a lot of pain. I think that I become more sensitive to sunlight. I get more irritable, and I can get really cranky, and depending on the person, even sometimes violent towards someone. And that's after going for a long time and depending on the situation.
Now, can vampires spot other vampires without being told they're vampires, or some kind of way to, tell?
I think there is, and I think that's one thing in the community we really don't necessarily learn about or teach, but there is a way. I've been around other people where you just knew in a crowd. There's just an attraction you kind of have towards that person, almost like a physical attraction you have when meeting someone you're interested in. There's just suddenly you notice that person across the room, and it's different than a physical attraction, but you notice them, you notice there's something about them, you're drawn to them in a way, and I think that you notice each other.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's almost a way where you can communicate with that person on a telepathic level. You know that other person is who they are without having to speak a word.
I was just sitting here thinking about that, what you said last night during the Halloween bash about ancient aliens and the vampire connection, because I don't know if you're familiar with Lawrence Gardner's work or not, but he did an article called Starfire of the Gods. And at one point, he did connect the people that used to drink this here blood they called Starfire to, vampires, in other words.
Mm-hmm. And yes, and as far as the ancient aliens theory, there are some people in the community who do believe that some of us maybe spawned from some gods of some sort, and that they may be from the ancient aliens, and the reason why we are more heightened in awareness and have the abilities we have is because we're like a subhuman, something other than human, a human hybrid. But there are many theories out there, and I don't think any one of us really knows quite sure what exactly we are. So the community is always on the search for the truth, and I think that awareness has become a lot better in the last few years. There's been a lot of research, and there's been more scientific study, and people are taking the topic a lot more serious than it has been in say, like the last 20 years.
I think that's only true in a lot of different areas of the paranormal, and I think a lot of that can go back to the fact that there's little by little getting to be more and more scientists that's actually coming over to the paranormal side.
Oh, yes, I think so. And I think a lot of our generation was born from people who were more accepting and more open-minded. At least the online generation, where the internet came about and the vampire community began to come online, I think a lot of those children were born from open-minded generations.
That's a very distinct possibility. There's a guy that's listening to us right now, and his name is James Hines. He goes by Genocide, and he's thinking that he might have descended from Anunnaki, but he's never shared with me that he was a vampire, for example, or that he had reason to believe he might be one. But he is of the Rh negative factor, and he thinks that that's one of the indicators that that particular blood type might descend from the Anunnaki. Okay, that's you just put that in the chat room. I thought that was him for a minute. But at any rate, Do you know anything about any connection between the Rh negative blood factor and the vampires? That a lot of them have that kind of blood type or not? Maybe.
Well, as far as the research that we've seen is that there's vampires of all blood types, and there are quite a few theories with blood types. There's theories about it being a bloodborne like disease. There's theories that it's a transmitted issue. There's also that it's born in the blood. It's in the history of the blood. But there's quite a few theories out there. But we have seen vampires across all blood types as well. And some of the websites that I have provided will show some research that has been done recently, and it actually covers some of these things.
Okay. I'd like to read up on some of that myself because I've never really delved into vampires that much. I've been so busy with my show and looking for guests and my study of the ancient astronaut theory and cooking and one having and another, and it seems like I never have a spare moment. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But I want to go ahead and real quick, move over here to some of these links that you had put up here. And I'm going to start putting them in the chat room as we talk about them. And the first one is AtlantaVampireAlliance.com. And are you a member of this site or?
I happen to be a member of the site. But this website here has a lot of information. They did a few years back a few surveys on people who believe themselves to be vampires or believe themselves to be even other kin or were or anything like that, fairies, anything like this. When we did surveys in the community and came back with statistics around the world of what people thought they were, ailments they suffered from, a lot of medical research as to what they were, what they've suffered from, and what genetic race they were, everything. They did another survey another few years ago and just compiled all the research, and it just has tons of stuff on the community. And you can see that pretty much everyone suffers from the same types of things, that everyone identifies with the same abilities, and I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going, but there's a lot of research and a lot of information on this site here.
Sounds like there's been a lot. I haven't personally checked it out, but it does sound like it. Now, I had somebody tell me that link I put in there to Starfire of the Gods messed up our chat room, and I see what it done. It pushed everything off to the side where you can't see who's in here now. And I went and deleted that link, and I'm typing in here right now for whoever's in the chat room to refresh so they won't have that link in there anymore, messing it up where they can't see who's in the chat room. Okay. And in the meantime, we can get back to where we were at. But now that's their site. Does it mostly have forums, or does it have groups, or blogs, or?
It does have forums. It's recently become a forum. They have links to different interviews. Like I said, the vampire community, they really advertise themselves. They really are out there helping to spread the word, helping to with research and trying to get credible links out, credible people out, so that people who are just beginning to awaken and beginning to realize who they might be, or end up being completely lost and finding that there's something completely different than a vampire, but just need that information and that resource out there, can find these things and can find things that are actually going to help them. There were sites out there many years ago, and still some today, where people became lost because the information wasn't correct, and it was more based on Hollywood ideals that try to portray themselves as true versus just a fantasy site. So the community has tried over the last few years to put out some really credible information.
All right, and moving right along, you also got a link here to psychicvampire.org. Maybe you can tell us a little something about this site. It looks like a very nice site.
I found the site to be very helpful as well. It has a lot of information on the site for people who happen to be psychic vampires. It shows you techniques on how to feed, symptoms you might have, why you may even need to take in the psychic energy for people who are very new to it. It shows you ways to protect yourself from people who try to take psychic energy from you, and how to feed from large crowds. And then there's an etiquette on who you shouldn't feed from and who you shouldn't take from, and that it should be a consensual thing. You shouldn't just take from others, that you should have written notice, or they have contracts even in the community, but that you shouldn't take from, say, a small child. That would be wrong to take from them. It's almost borderline on the same lines of you wouldn't want to sleep with a young child. It's against the law. There's morals there. You shouldn't take from a child in any way, because you're taking from their life force. You're taking from their essence. It's something that is very personal to that person, and they have no way to willingly allow you to take from them or not.
How do you first recognize when you got a vampire drawing your energy?
Well, I think that everyone's probably experienced it. I think there's a lot of people out there who may not even know who they are. And I'm sure everyone's come across the person where they just say, hey, you know what, I just can't keep up with that person. Every time I go out with them, they're just too crazy. I don't have the energy to keep up. I don't know what it is, but they can go on forever, and I just get so tired. Or that when that person walks into the room, that just the whole element of that room changes. I get so frustrated. I get so angry. I think everyone's had a boss that's come into the room and has just been so overwhelming, or someone who's come into the room who's been very frightening. They've just changed the air of that room. And I think that some of those people may not necessarily know who they are, but they change the energy because it's what they like to feed from. Either everything becomes happy, or some people like to feed it and only feed from negative energy, and they kind of bring everyone down. I think we've all noticed that, so I think everyone can kind of get an idea of what it feels like to be fed from, even if that person didn't know they were doing it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I remember us covering last time he was on my show, was that sometimes vampire will draw on your energy without even knowing they're doing it.
Yes, it's true. And then there's some who fully well know that they are vampires, that they do have the ability to draw energy, but it's gone so long since they've fed properly or fed regularly that they begin to take energy in without knowing it. It's almost the same as a person who's starved themselves for so long. Without knowing it, their body begins to feed on themselves. And without knowing it, they're taking in and storing fat, and their body is healing itself and protecting itself without them even having knowledge of it. And it's the same thing. When a person loses so much energy, you go into a survival instinct, and you start pulling energy in, whether you want to or not, to whether you intend to. And sometimes you can take it from people who necessarily don't need it taken from. You'll take it from the small child if you're around children. You'll take it from an older person who you shouldn't maybe draw from. So you have to really watch yourself and feed regularly, take care of yourself, be healthy. There are responsibilities when you are who you are.
Well, Desiree, I've got to ask you now, is your battery weak on your phone by any chance?
Actually, no.
Okay, it sounded like you were garping.
It is an internet phone, so that may be part of it as well.
Yeah, I've noticed before I got my 6 gigabyte computer on my old one, if I would check my email during the show, it would garble the voice. So sometimes your computer can only handle so many chores at a time depending on your memory or processor, and that could have something to do with it also.
Well, in Germany, you will tend to see that signals are very low. It's not like America. In the internet in, I think, Europe altogether, places I've been, it's not quite as important. there are other things to do. They more believe in, getting out there and interacting socially and not really spending too much time with media the way we do in America. So signals tend to be low, almost broadband kind of dial-up speed, and so the internet quite suffers out here.
Okay. Well, at any rate, I was also going to ask you if you had some advice for people that they should do if they do feel like their energy is being drained.
Well, there are some shielding techniques that you can learn from some of these sites, but to be aware of it. And if you don't have the time to come to any of these sites, there are some basic techniques you can do, almost like if you're trying to feed, but you don't want to bring in negative energy, you can picture something like a colander in front of you so that you're filtering out any negative energy and bringing in only what it is that you need to help you sustain. If you're trying to avoid energy altogether, you may not be a vampire. You just are avoiding that person you feel is drawing energy from you. You can still do the same type of shielding techniques. You can imagine a field of energy around you that is blocking them from getting through. Now, the stronger that person is and the more techniques that they know and the longer they've been feeding, they may be able to break through these barriers. So if it really becomes a problem, then I would recommend some of these sites, and they really show you how to continue to practice and to become stronger at building those shields.
Okay. Well, the next one, I'm going to try to put it in the chat room here and see if it doesn't, it's kind of long, and see how, oh yeah, it took really good. And this is the vampire calendar. It's www.veritasvosa. I can't even pronounce that. Maybe you could do it better than I could.
Yeah, this is one of the sites here. Actually, I don't really know this one too well that I came across, but it's by someone that I do know, and it shows a lot of the articles that we have. Like I say, we really do a lot of advertising for each other, events that are coming up in the area, resources. There's some of the authors, articles, books, but we try to really educate each other and try to keep the information that's out there as true and valid as possible.
Okay. And the next site in line was Temple Uvup or Uvup. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it looks like it's got a wiki. It's got forums, groups, blogs, photos, download. It looks like it's almost a paranormal or vampire, should I say, social network.
It does have it is kind of a social network. There is forums and groups and blogs. It was at one point trying to be an actual church before it really went online, but this was years ago, and I think they were really trying to have a place where the community could really go to and learn more information from, and even some of the more advanced people to take in more energy techniques and to really be able to practice more often. So this was formed by somebody who had that idea in mind, and it's really gone online throughout the years with just not enough following, not enough information getting put out there, financial issues. A lot of people are just regular, everyday people with 9-to-5s who are trying to get the information out, and a lot of these resources are coming from, their own pockets, and there's not too many people really backing these things yet. But it is starting to pick up.
And while I was listening to you tell us about that website, I went ahead and moved forward to the Club des Vampires International. It's on Facebook. It's got a long number at the end of the URL. I'm going to paste this link into the chat room. But you can also go to Facebook and in the search engine put Club DS Vampires International, and it should bring you right to this here page. And it's actually a group, and I take it you're probably a member of this group, right, Desiree?
Yes, and this is currently where I'm posting a lot of articles. I don't have my website any longer. It's really hard to get a American IP address out here in Germany, so it's still taking a little bit of time. But I am a member of this particular Facebook group, and it is a private group, and a lot of people who are on this site are, I guess, either, if you want to call them prominent members in the vampire community, but they're people who kind of been in the community for quite some time. We all kind of at least know of each other. But it's a good place to go to if you're already kind of really know who you are and you're ready to share information and maybe get your information out to the community.
Okay. Now, we got one link left to cover, and I can't even pronounce it. It was the last one you sent me. It looks like it starts with a S. Sanguinarius. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, this is a site that's just like the psychicvampire.org is kind of the flip side. This is a site for people who are blood feeders. It gives information on healthy feeding techniques, safe feeding techniques, the best places to feed. There's donor listings. Most of our donor listings go through proper channels. People have to take blood tests. They have to register as actual donors. And everything is really safe. It tells you about how to clean infected wounds, how to protect against infection. It tells you about how biting necessarily isn't a good thing, and some safer ways to draw blood, some healthier ways to draw blood, things you can eat even to flavor blood, things you can eat to stay healthier for your donor. There's resources for donors on to what they feel and why they do what they do. So there's a lot of information there.
James was asking, out of curiosity, what made you choose the vampire lifestyle?
I don't really think it was a choice. I think I've always been who I was. Since the time I was a young kid, I've never been quite the same as others. And I think there really wasn't much of a choice in it. I think there, for me, was a choice on preference on how I fed, but I don't think there was a choice as to whether or not I could or not. I've always had a lack of energy, and when I was younger, I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know about proper feeding techniques, and I was very sick, and there was times when I would get a cold and I'd be bedridden for months, and I didn't really quite understand why I didn't have the energy of other people. I would even identify with my teachers and hang out with older adults versus kids in my school because just my energy level more matched them. And I think that it became a necessity to really get out there and to begin to feed and to learn about how to properly feed. Otherwise, I think I really would have suffered in my health.
So this being a vampire has caused you problems growing up from, say, your peers?
Oh yes, yeah. It was harder to identify with children my age, and you don't quite get along with them because you're always still a little bit different, and your energy level isn't quite the same as them. So they're ready to go out and play and run, and you might be more on the level of staying at home and reading a good book, which most children don't really do. So it was very hard growing up to really keep friends. But as you get older, the problem tends to go away, and plus by that time, hopefully you've learned proper feeding techniques and have learned who you are. But it was very hard as a child.
I can imagine. Has it gotten any easier as an adult?
I think so. They've tried still with my energy level. I've gone to doctors and things, and they don't quite know exactly what I have. They say possibly it's fibromyalgia, which causes a pain and causes your energy level to be low, but it doesn't quite match. They've done all kinds of blood tests, and they can't quite find the reason why my energy is low, which I think is another way to show me that it validates me, who I am, and the choices that I've made being a vampire. I think that, since there's nothing they can find medically, but there's a few things that I've come close to, it really shows, this is not just a psychological thing. This is actually a physical thing. This is something that can be proven by many tests and scientists and specialists that I have what I have, that there's something out there that is causing me to have lack of energy, and they don't quite know exactly what it is.
Now that kind of makes me wonder how many other people might have, think they have fibromyalgia that in all actuality have their vampire, or maybe even people with, chronic rest disorder or chronic charge syndrome or something like that.
And if you look through some of these, on one of the sites, it shows people what they've been diagnosed with and the things that they may have. And fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, those come up a lot. Because
that's what I was trying to think of, chronic fatigue.
Yeah, and diabetes, any blood-borne diseases, those tend to come up a lot. After tests are run, they show that there's something not quite right in the blood, that there's something not quite right with your energy level. There's something not quite right with maybe your iron levels, but nothing enough to cause you to be anemic. Nothing quite enough to cause you to have chronic fatigue. Nothing quite enough in any category to really make you fit, but just enough to almost have any one of these things.
I wonder, like my wife, she's been diagnosed with Graves, with fibromyalgia, and thyroid. I'm not sure what all, but I mean, she's always tired.
I completely understand it. And the pain is almost like the fibromyalgia too, and it's possible that, I could have both, but when you haven't fed for a long time, you can really feel your body kind of decaying. You feel like you're not quite as healthy as you should be. It feels pretty much the same, I guess, to someone who hasn't eaten in a long time, who hasn't had something to drink in a long time. You can physically feel in yourself dying and becoming sick and becoming ill and becoming weaker. It's something that I think is a must. It's not really a choice. It's something that you have to do. It's the same as breathing or eating. And I don't think people really realize that. I think that a lot of people think that it's a choice, that we're out there playing some kind of strange game. I think a lot of us might even wish that they weren't vampires, that they didn't have to feed from blood, that they didn't have to feed from energy. I think a lot of us might think, I would rather just not have to deal with the headache of trying to explain this to my family or to my coworkers and just live normal life. But unfortunately, it's not that way for a lot of us.
Yeah, I know it ain't. My sister has mentioned that she knows a lot of people in a lot of different forums who say they have fibromyalgia, so it's a very common issue is what I'm gathering out of that. But I never really thought about connecting it to, vampirism or chronic fatigue for that matter, at least not until today.
No, yeah. And I think, a lot of people, they see the Hollywood thing and they think that, it's a lot more fantasy and fun than it is. But there are a lot of medical issues. We can't go out in the sun too long. It's not because we'll burst into flames or like the New Age the vampire stories, we don't sparkle, but we tend to blister more, have a sun allergy, will burn more easily. It doesn't matter if you're fair-skinned, it doesn't matter if you have a tan, or if you're from a tropical climate, you can still burn very easy, you can get dehydrated very easy, suffer from heat stroke a lot faster than most people do, and the energy that most people lose from being in the sun is just that much more intensified. And just like taking a nap in the sun, it's always very relaxing. You can sleep that much longer in a warm sun. You'll see animals even doing it. You'll see your cat sitting in the window. those type of things that are relaxing to most people that help them to relax and sleep longer just are too much for people like us. It just drains too much of our energy. It takes too much from us, and it ends up leaving us very sick and depleted.
So how do you manage to keep going? Because you seem to have a very busy lifestyle.
Yeah, I do, and I've been trying to take more breaks, but yes, it has been quite busy. I think the reason why I try to stay busy currently is because my husband happens to not be home. He's away for his job, and he's been away for almost a year, so the only way to stay sane is to stay busy. That's kind of my motto, but I try to avoid the sun. In America, it's a lot easier. We have a lot of 24-hour things open. We have a lot of nightlife. I tend to try to move to cities where things are open later. I try to stay out of the sun as much as possible, and it's good for aging too. You know, that's got that side effect as well. But like when I happened to live in El Paso, Texas, for a couple of years, and that was horrible. I couldn't even so far as make it maybe 2 miles down the road without having to run for safety into the nearest Walgreens because it was just too hot. I would get sick very easy, and I tried very, very much to live in a city like that, but even at night it was very difficult. Just the heat was too much after a long day of being in the sun. My skin would blister and boil, and it was just too much for me. But here in Germany, you really don't have to worry about that at all. The sun is never around. It's always nice and cool. Even when the sun is out, it's very clouded, so it's a lot easier to live here. So I haven't had any problems really the last couple of years.
All right. Well, I was just thinking, though, I'd imagine that during the winter, y'all probably thrive then, don't you?
Oh, yeah. And you'll tend to see people in America, like, say, live in places like Seattle, where there's no sun there. I mean, it's always rainy. Places like that. And where most people suffer from the whole blues during the winter season, I think that's when we actually thrive and become happier because now it's cooler, the sun has gone down at an earlier hour. That's when we can actually lead more normal lifestyles. We can get out there earlier, get to the grocery store earlier, hang out with our kids, do things that most people do at a normal hour. A lot of us have to stay up very late and then be at work very early, and it is very complicating, and it does disturb our lives quite a bit.
Okay. Now, I wanted to real quick, I always like to get a plug in for United Paranormal International because I think they're really great folks and because they plug me too. So I hope you don't mind if I throw that in there. I also want to remind everybody to please come back again tomorrow night. My guest will be Saeed David Farman, and I had a little trouble with that. And we're going to be discussing the Alchemy event 11/11/11 that's going to come up this month later on. And we're going to only be on the air for about 30 minutes. We're going to take a quick break somewhere halfway through it, but he's going to tell us what all he's going to have at his conference that he's called the Alchemy event. As I heard it put by Kevin Smith. I had to stop and think for a minute. This is supposed to be a really, really huge event. I know he's got some people there that are going to be very interesting. He's going to have Nick Redfern there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Barra is going to be there. And a lot of people may not be familiar with Mike Barra because for many years he stayed in the background. He was over there at the Enterprise mission. He was Richard Hoagland's webmaster. And then he also co-authored NASA Conspiracy or Dark Secrets. I think it was Dark Secrets, if I'm not mistaken, with Richard Hoagland. And he's since then put out his own book, The Choice. But the reason y'all probably haven't heard about him till recently is he was in the background just doing webmaster work, and he recently came to the forefront. So we're going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow night. And what about you, Desiree? You got anything coming up in the near future?
Well, in the near future, we'll see. Well, recently we just had a vampire ball here where I did a little bit of research on the community, and we're trying to start a new chapter out here in Germany for Americans and Germans alike. for people to come to us for resources, and I guess even at some point maybe do meetings or get-togethers of some kind, but have online resources and information for anyone who may need to come to me or to the other people in the chapter to find information, be pointed in the right direction, or just confirm who they are, even at the very least even have someone just to socialize with who they can identify.
You know, that's funny you should mention that about people to socialize with, because I've often told everybody, I myself, I'd like to stay away from organized religion. I don't think it's the path to God. But having said that, if you're not looking to go there and say, this is my path to God, but you do want to learn or you do want to fellowship or something like that, I think it's great for that kind of purpose. I just, I wouldn't recommend people taking the doctrines too seriously. The church doctrine has really led to a lot of trouble in the past, in other words, and I don't think they meant to do it, or at least not in recent times, but, sometimes they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, very true. And as an anthropologist, I think I have mixed views on religion. You see a lot of religions being formed out of people's opinions and financial gain, and I'm not saying all of them are, but some of them are, some of them have been, if you really research them and you go back. And so I don't tend to really gravitate towards organized religion, but I accept it completely. I think I take a little bit of use from everything, but I think we all have one thing in common, is that we all believe that there is at least some kind of unified energy, whether it be you give to yourself in a daily basis or you get it from a higher power, but energy is definitely my thing. I believe that it's out there. We see it every day, and I think that it's the one thing we can all agree on.
Well, I've heard about this thing called 0-point energy. Do you think it's possible for vampires to tap into 0-point energy?
Well, I think that vampires were more sensitive to all forms of energy. I think that's why we can communicate with spirits. I think that's how we can pick up on ailments in others and be able to heal people. I think that we are more sensitive to all forms of energy, and we can tap into that in many different ways.
Well, if they did tap into it that way, that would probably, help decrease the need for like human blood or even animal blood, because 0-point energy is abundant. It's all around you at all times. So that would have to be pretty handy, I would think.
Well, yes, and I think that more of the vampire community is going towards feeding from energy because they feel like that's kind of the new age movement in the vampire community. Why is there a necessary even reason to feed from blood when we can take from energy, and we don't necessarily have to have a donor? We can take from it at all times. It's around us at all times. But there's still that ageless question, what is better and what is actually right. And there's some very diehard sanguinarians who feed from only blood and think that they're completely two different things, and that one does not necessarily carry over to the other. So it's all a matter of opinion, and I tend to still prefer the blood. I think that there's more spiritual connection in it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's also going to ask you something else. I just had it just a minute ago. Oh, yeah. Are you planning on getting a website soon?
Yes, actually, we're in the middle of working on a website. There is someone else who is asking me to submit a little bit of information with them, and so I'm kind of waiting to see where that one goes. But I'm still working on something here in Germany with the German vampire community. So it's not something that will be readily available necessarily for America, but I'm trying to get that information out to that other individual so that they can pass it along.
Well, your links are going to be over here. That'll help pass it along. I'd also like to encourage anybody that listens to this to pass the URL to paranormalpalace.com or Paranormal Palace Radio. I actually lost the paranormalpalaceradio.com domain name, but I still have paranormalpalace.com. Pass that around, invite people to shows, tell them what you think of us, just be honest with the folks, and I'm pretty sure if you enjoy coming here, they're going to probably enjoy it too. And Desiree, if you get your website up, please let me know, and I can add that link into my site, maybe to the archive where yours is at. That way it'll be easier for them to tell who it goes to, in other words.
Okay, yeah, not a problem. I'd love to do that.
Well, we got like 10 minutes remaining. I always like to thank everybody for listening in, because I couldn't have a show without my listeners any quicker than I could without a guest. Unless I just wanted to come on the air and just babble to the air, but I wouldn't find that very entertaining. And I don't think I could talk that long without having somebody to feed off from anyway. I guess you can say I'm an information vampire. But we're going to have more shows this week than usual. We're going to have tomorrow night, like I said, David Farman, or Syed David Farman. And then we're going to have Thursday night Michael Sands. He's going to talk about how to manage a religion. And then I'm going to have Bernardo Castrop Saturday talking about dreamed up reality. So we got a really busy week, and I invite everybody to come back. I hope everybody enjoys themselves. And Deborah, have you got anything you want to add, any like last minute thoughts or anything?
Last minute thoughts. I would just like to point out for any of the newbies out there who are not quite sure what they are or have recently awakened that there's a lot of information out there, and that don't get discouraged. There's plenty of people out there who can identify with you. There's nothing wrong with being who you are, and you quite possibly could be a vampire. And if anyone in Europe is looking for any resources, my door is always open. You can follow any one of my links on Facebook. I joined the club if you'd like, and I'll point you to wherever you need to go.
And I'll always be happy to forward any information along to you so that people can always find you. And once again, don't forget about United Paranormal International. That's www.unitedparanormalinternational.ning. I think it's just HTTP. I don't think you put a www. I think that's a directory or a subdomain. In other words, you don't usually put www in front of a subdomain, but you can run over there. In fact, I'm the South Texas director over there, and I know a lot of the people over there. I've been with them for a couple of years now, so I know they're basically good folks over there. And Desiree, you especially may want to take a visit over there, because I don't think they have anybody, or not very many people that I noticed over there, that is knowledgeable in vampirism, and that could be a new line for them to cover, in other words.
Okay, well, sounds good.
And also want to let everybody know that I've got my own social network. I've had it really actually for quite some time now, called the Paranormal Club. And this is another one. I don't have the actual .com domain I used to have. I switched it out for a free one when I was low on money. You know how the economy's been. But I'm going to put that link. It's www.theparanormalclub.cocc up there. And that's just a great place to meet wonderful people. Everybody there has been, I haven't had no problems with anybody other than the fact that people haven't been posting, they haven't been active, but there's, when they were posting, they were pretty friendly. It could just be that I'd went a spell without being able to post myself. But I'm showing right now we got 7 minutes left. Is there anything you want to throw in there that I might have forgotten about?
Well, I think you covered quite a bit, but I guess what I'd like to say again is just don't give up your search. There's plenty of information out there, and I remember what it was like to feel lost, and don't be quick to dismiss that there may be something necessarily wrong with you, but then again, don't be too quick to just jump into thinking that you're a vampire. I know that today's society makes it look quite cool, but for those out there who may be and are looking for those resources, there's lots of information out there, and if you just get pointed in the right direction, I'm sure you'll live a much happier life and you'll feel a lot better physically.
Yeah, I think that goes for almost anything, whether it's a vampire, a psychic, a preacher, doing the right things is always good. I mean, and that differs from one person to the next, in other words.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know I do enjoy what I'm doing.
Finding that safe community and the proper information, and when it just feels right, that's what everyone's looking for.
Alrighty. Well, I guess since we've already covered everything, we can go ahead and draw this one to a close since I got to get John off to school tomorrow. It's been a wonderful time talking to you tonight, and I enjoyed having you last night as well. I want to thank you for both. And, hey, I hope to have you back again in the future.
Oh, I would love to, and thank you.
Okay, then. Thank you very much. You have a good one.
Oh, you too.
Bye-bye.